Good evening. My name is John Foran. I'm the Executive Director of Miami University's Menard Family Center for Democracy. And on behalf of the university and our partners at the Journal News and the League of Women Voters of Oxford, it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's debate featuring the two candidates who are running to represent Ohio's 53rd House District in the Ohio General Assembly. The winner of this race will represent northern and western sections of Butler County in the Ohio House of Representatives for a two-year term that will begin in January 2021. First, let me thank tonight's participating candidates, Democratic nominee Michelle Novak and Republican Party nominee Thomas Hall, who will both be introducing themselves shortly. Thank you for joining us for tonight's discussion. Let me also introduce my fellow moderators for tonight's debate, Jennifer Fisher, who is co-president of the League of Women Voters of Oxford, and Michael Pittman, who covers local politics and community affairs for the Journal News. Tonight's debate will begin with brief opening statements by each of the candidates, who will speak in the order determined a few minutes ago by a coin flip. After these candidate statements, then we'll move to roughly 45 minutes of questions, which will touch on a wide range of issues that are likely to face voters and government in the state of Ohio in the years ahead. The candidates have agreed to adhere to time limits so that we can cover a broad range of topics during the discussion. And each candidate will deliver a closing statement at the end. So without further ado, let me go ahead and move us to the candidates' opening statements. And first to speak for 2 minutes will be Ms. Novak.
Thank you so much for hosting us this evening. My name is Michelle Novak, and I'm a member of the Middletown City School District Board of Education. I'm currently in my second term. And while on the school board, I've been an advocate for children statewide and locally, and for more than 1 million children statewide. I have my bachelor's degree in corporate finance and a master's in public administration, both from Wright State University, where I graduated summa cum laude. My mother is a retired public school teacher, and my father is an entrepreneur and small business owner. I'm also an entrepreneur. But nothing's defined my life quite as much as being the mother of 4 unique and intelligent and incredible children who I fight for every day. I made the decision to accept the challenge of single motherhood at the age of 19. And I faced many challenges in my life since. My daughter, now 22 years old, has recently begun a successful career. My son, 18, is now a Navy sailor. And my other 2 sons, age 9 and 14, are in school. Now, while I grew up in Miamisburg, my children have all grown up in Middletown. This is our home that I chose because I fell in love with the people here. And when I came here in 2007, during the recession, I could see the potential that was here. Last year, I made the decision to run for state representative. This was not a decision I came by easily, but I came by with conviction because I had served on the school board and I had seen the impact that the state legislator was having on public education, how we were being undermined over and over again, and we were set up for failure, and our kids and our families and our communities were not able to get ahead. My name is Michelle Novak, and I hope that I will have your support for this election. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hall?
Yes, good evening. Thank you to Miami University, the Journal News, and the League of Women Voters on allowing us to meet in these unprecedented times. My name is Thomas Hall, and I am running to be your next state representative of the 53rd House District. This district is home. This district is a district I grew up in. I was born here, grew up here, and a proud alum of Madison High School and Miami University. I am very blessed to have this opportunity to serve the people of this amazing district. During the course of this campaign, we have put together quite an amazing resume ahead of this November 3rd election, and we have the endorsements of many organizations to prove it. So who are we? We are the pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-small business, defend our law enforcement, also backed by the Ohio State Medical Association. We are the endorsed friend of agriculture, and a Christian conservative candidate, and I am eager tonight to share my thoughts on a variety of issues that will greatly affect the people of this 53rd district. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We now turn to our questions for the candidates, and we begin with a question to the candidates from Mike Pittman.
All right, now you guys will notice one theme of going back and forth. It'll be like a tennis match on the types of questions, so it's going to keep you on your toes. The first one's about jobs and the economy here. So as Ohio's economy still continues to struggle, we're seeing some areas moving forward. Now, we know this is out of the district, but for example, the Indianapolis-based Ambrose Property Group is investing millions in the city of Fairfield to attract companies to a new business park designed for e-commerce and light manufacturing. Now, the Ambrose officials want to bring hundreds of jobs to that business park. What does Ohio need to do in order to keep seeing more of this type of investing? What does Ohio need to do to bring its economy back on track? Mr. Hall, you got 1 minute.
Yeah, so it's a great question. In these unprecedented times, it's even more of an important question to ask ourselves on how we get Ohio's economy back safely. In this race, as alluded to before in the opening remarks, we are the pro-business candidate. We have the endorsement of the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, the NFIB, and the Ohio Society of CPAs. With that being said, Ohio needs to cut the unnecessary red tape that is restricting our small businesses. We need to get back to the table and to meet with our small businesses and meet with our businesses that want to come to Ohio to make it easier and more accessible for them to choose Ohio. You alluded to a neighboring state. There's no reason why that company couldn't have chose Ohio. All it comes down to is putting the right restrictions, or taking the restrictions off and putting the right parameters in place to get those businesses to Ohio.
Sorry, my microphone was off. Ms. Novak, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Well, I haven't just read about small businesses, but I've actually worked for my father's small business and started my own small business. And I've talked to other small business owners here in Middletown and across the county. And we need access to technology so that we can look at new ways of implementing our business. How can we go online? How can we be more innovative? I think we need to bring small business owners together and have those conversations. And we need to have a state government that's willing to work with local businesses here. I support small family-owned businesses. I think that that's the key to bringing our economy back, as well as large infrastructure projects that would bring connectivity to our students here and that would bring it to our businesses here. I'll end there.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Jenny, you're up.
Okay, good evening. How would you rate the state's response to the coronavirus thus far? What elements do you agree with the governor and his administration? How do you disagree with the governor? 1 minute each, starting with Ms. Novak.
I think that, somewhere around the middle, because I think at the beginning, the governor did a really good job when he realized and recognized that there was a real issue here, and it was very ambiguous, that he shut things down right away. At that point, I felt like there should have been more conversation, except I know that they were still getting information, that we were looking at hospitals not having the PPE to support what they were anticipating from the data. Now, as that changed, the response started to evolve. I like how the governor has been very transparent with sharing the information that he has. Now, remember, we have a Republican governor, and we have a supermajority in the House and the Senate. And I think everything started to fall apart when they weren't able to have conversations and they weren't able to agree on things. And our House and Senate were undermining what the governor was doing. And I think it really brought us into chaos. So I would say at the beginning, things were going well, and then it started to gradually go downhill from there. And people lost sight of the people here in our communities that were being impacted. That got lost somewhere along the way.
Okay, thank you. 1 minute for Mr. Hall.
Jenny, could you repeat the question, please?
How would you rate the state's response to the coronavirus thus far? What elements do you agree with the governor and his administration? How do you disagree with the governor?
Yeah, so I think early on in March, when this kind of all started with the governor having his daily press conferences, I think that I speak for a lot of people in saying that his response was great. We were appreciating how transparent he was being with the Ohioans, how accessible he was being. He was displaying all of our data. But there came a point, shortly after that time period, that the data just didn't start to add up, and the numbers weren't adding up to what he was saying. Some of the data that come out later in the last month or so, we've realized that a lot of the deaths related to COVID were from underlying conditions. So the state's response, I wholeheartedly believe in our small businesses, and I wholeheartedly believe in the people of this district to make the best decisions. I think that we should lift the restrictions that are currently in place and get Ohio's economy back, and let the small businesses decide what the best steps are, because without their input, a lot of small businesses aren't going to open back up after this pandemic.
Can I do a real fast yes/no question? Do you support the state's mask mandate? Yes or no? Starting with Ms. Novak. Do you support the state's mask mandate?
No.
Okay, Mr. Hall?
No.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on.
All right, thanks. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about agricultural policy in the state. We've been hearing a lot about the tough times that some farmers in Ohio have been facing right now, as that sector of the economy has been significantly affected by the pandemic, by international trade disputes, and various other factors. In your view, is Ohio's state government doing enough to help out its farmers? And what changes, if any, would you like to see in the state's agricultural policies? And you could answer this in 1 minute each, and start with Mr. Hall.
Yeah, so looking at our district has a lot of farms. We're very fortunate to have such a district that has so many great farms all across it. Here in Madison, we have some all the way out to Riley Township and Morgan Township. In this race specifically, I was very honored to be the designated friend of agriculture. That is their endorsement for the race. With that being said, Ohio and the state policies, you can never do enough for our farmers. Farmers are the backbone of the economy, and I'm wholeheartedly supporting our farmers. As far as specific policies go, we have been involved, and I say we as some of the officials here in Butler County have been involved with the Ohio Farm Bureau and the Butler County Farm Bureau on stances and ways we can make it easier for farmers. Some of the things that we've talked about, I hope to accomplish the next GA, but the ongoing conversation needs to keep happening, a roundtable or an event at a farm. That way we can get on the same page with our farmers of what they need from the state to carry out their daily activities.
All right, thank you. Ms. Novak?
So I think that what we need to do is, first we need to recognize the importance of our local family farms. And we need to be willing to provide them the support they need through subsidies, through agricultural research at some of our higher education institutions, to just improve farming methods the best that we can, because we're expecting them to compete with corporate farms. And I think that we need to put more of our resources into those local family farms, because it's not just that we want to support local businesses, local farmers. We also want to make sure that we have a local food supply, because I think that with COVID, we have recognized more than ever, if we didn't recognize already, that we have to be locally producing our food. I like to have channels where we can connect people where there's areas where there's food scarcity to local farms, and even include the produce purchases from our local farms in SNAP benefits. That way we can keep this cycle going of supporting our farms and supporting our local people.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, great. As I said before, we're going to be moving topic to topic, and we're going to move on to gun regulations. Earlier this month, last month, Governor Mike DeWine had renewed his push for gun control reform. He dubbed the measure back in 2019 Strong Ohio, which proposes, among other things, that the state increase and improve background checks, prevent access to firearms for those deemed dangerous by a court, and increase criminal penalties for anyone who provides a firearm to somebody legally prohibited from possessing one. So first, Ms. Novak, tell us about your support or non-support of Mr. DeWine's Strong Ohio proposals. 1 minute.
No, I support the Strong Ohio proposals. I support our Second Amendment. I don't think that we should, for no reason, take people's guns away from them. I think that it is our right to be a gun owner, own a gun. But I also think that there are situations where we have to be able to have some outlet for removing guns from the home. I was working at the Alzheimer's Association. I know that Alzheimer's is a brain disease, and there was an instance where there was a woman who was married to someone with Alzheimer's. You're worried that it might be possible that one day they might forget who you are and think you're a stranger in the house. And there was no repercussions and nothing that she could do and nothing we could recommend for her. So it would be nice in some instances where it's warranted to go through a court and have a judge decide on whether or not it would be appropriate to remove that gun. But I think that it should be done through due process and very carefully, because I do support our Second Amendment right.
Mr. Hall, 1 minute.
Yeah, so I wholeheartedly support our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. As alluded to before in this race, we are endorsed by Buckeye Firearms. We have an A rating from the NRA. My opponent says that she supports Second Amendment, but she has an F rating from the NRA. I'm also an active CCW holder. As far as Governor DeWine's proposal, I can't support that. The reason I can't support that is I don't think we should put any more restrictions on gun owners. I'm against expanding the background checks, and I'm against any proposed red flag laws.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, this is going to be a series of yes/no questions, and then you'll have an opportunity to expand on it. There has been controversy during this election season about voter registration and absentee voting. In light of that, I'd like to ask you the yes or no questions. The first one, do you support Ohio's no excuse system for early voting and vote by mail? Starting with Mr. Hall, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Novak?
Yeah.
Okay. Ohio currently has an online voter registration form. Would you support going one step further, like 19 other states have done, to create a system of automatic voter registration? Yes or no, Mr. Hall?
No.
Okay, Ms. Novak?
Yes.
Okay. Do you support Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose's view that Ohio voters should only have access to ballot drop boxes located on site at the County Board of Elections? Yes or no, Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Ms.
No.
Novak? Okay. Do you support the recent decision by Ohio's controlling board, which denied the funding to cover the cost of postage for all mail-in ballots here in Ohio? Yes or no, Mr. Hall?
What was the question? You kind of cut out. I'm sorry.
Okay. Do you support the recent decision by Ohio's controlling board, which denied the funding to cover the cost of postage for all mail-in ballots here in Ohio?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
More generally, what can the state legislature do to help ensure that Ohio's elections are free and fair? 1 minute, Mr. Hall.
Yeah, so I think that Secretary LaRose, I think he's done a great job of giving Ohioans multiple options to vote. You can vote early, you can request your ballot through the mail, and then you can ultimately vote on election day. So as far as changes go, I think Secretary LaRose has done a great job in preparing Ohioans coming out, months and months ago saying we will vote in person on election day. You will still have the absentee process that you could take part in. You can also vote in person at the local board of elections. So as far as the state goes, I'm not too sure that there could be much more that they could do. They give Ohioans ample opportunities to vote, to show up and vote, or to let your voice be heard by mail. But at the same time, I think that Secretary LaRose has done a great job through this process, even through the unprecedented primary that we all had to go through.
Okay, 1 minute, Ms. Novak.
Well, we are in a pandemic, and so instead of thinking of ways that we should limit voting, I think we definitely need to think of ways that we should increase access to voting and keep people safe. I know that there's been legislation that's been sitting on Senator Coley's desk for a year now that would really allow people to request absentee ballots through a simple online system. Right now we can register to vote online. Why can't we request absentee ballots online? Right now the process is where you have to print something off. So you have to have a printer, and then you have to send it in, and then you get it back, and then you send it in again, and they're not even paying for postage. So I think that they should pay for postage for those ballots, because I think that could be equivalent to a poll tax by not doing that. Make sure that we have plenty of time to early vote. And also I would be in support of eventually being able to email ballots. But really, I think that we have to have those conversations and look at it as how can we expand access to more people and make it easier for people to vote while keeping it safe and have the integrity of the system intact.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. I'd like to shift our focus for a bit to education and state support for education with a couple of different questions in this arena. First, regarding K through 12 education, as you're aware, Ohio has struggled for a very long time to come up with a formula for funding K through 12 education in the state that meets the state constitutional requirement for a thorough and efficient system of public education. Given that, what are your ideas about how to address this problem at the state level? For instance, please be specific here. Would you support an increase in state level funding for local school districts, for instance? Would you support increased reliance on local property taxes? Maybe you have some other ideas on how to address this issue. Please be specific in your answers, and 1 minute each.
Yeah, John, maybe we get 2 minutes for this, please, because I feel like this is an important issue.
Yeah, I think that. I
didn't want to interrupt Michelle because she's going to go first, but I wanted to make sure we both got 2 minutes for this.
Yeah, we'll be loose on the 1 minute.
Thank you.
And it can be a lot here. How's that sound? So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm. So I almost need the question again.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it seemed like there were multiple parts.
Yeah. Yeah. There are multiple parts, and this is about K through 12 education. Basically, the question is. For decades, well over a decade now, we have a system that has been that is not constitutional, according to the Supreme Court of Ohio. That it's too heavily reliant on local funding, and there are concerns about unequal education throughout the state, among other things. So, do you have ideas on what the state legislature could do to address this issue? That's been around for a while, frankly.
Yeah, no, you threw me off because you mentioned that our current funding model is unconstitutional, and then you mentioned would we raise property taxes to help pay for public education. I think that's the core of the issue, is that we're relying too heavily on property taxes to pay for public school education, and it is building inequities into the system. I think Cupp-Patterson was a pretty good compromise, or at least a good start. And I know that they're talking about it right now, and I'm glad that they are. And they're also looking at ways to address taking the emphasis, and this is a bipartisan bill, they're looking at taking the emphasis off of property taxes by moving some of the funding to income taxes. And I think that is something that we need to look at. I also think that I think we have funding, but it's being channeled into our private schools, and as a response, because of the Ed Choice expansion that happened last year. So for a lot of school districts, and it was threatening to impact over 400 school districts statewide, where the state was mandating that local schools are now redistributing their funds to pay for private school education. And those were funds that local residents voted for in levies to go specifically to public schools. And now the state is getting involved in those decisions, and I don't think that they should. I think that the state, if they want to continue to fund charter schools, should do it directly, because I know that the funding model that was capped for a lot of school districts like Monroe, like Middletown, we were expected to pay out 100% while we were only getting 50% from the state or 70% from the state. And so there was an outflow of money again from public schools. And it's not about the money. What it is when you see an outflow and underfunded public schools, you have kids that are not getting the support services that they need. And it builds these cycles where our kids aren't getting the services that they need because they're not getting the funding. And so they're not achieving at higher levels like we want to see them achieving at. And then we're deemed failing schools. And so the state takes more of our money, or we become a district that's in academic distress. And the state just comes and takes over our democratically elected school boards and institutions, taking the voice away from from the voters and from taxpayers.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hall?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I attended Madison Local Schools Public School. I first want to say, how blessed are we to have in this district the teachers, the admin, the school boards that have had to persevere in these last few months to change how to teach online and to adapt to their students. So first of all, I'm very thankful for the teachers that we do have in this district. Number one, Ohio's school funding system is unconstitutional. That's the bottom line. I know the Ohio General Assembly they've made attempts at tackling the issue, but they always do seem to come up short. As a member of the Ohio House, I would prioritize funding our schools in a responsible manner that focuses on student success in the classroom and not the rating system. And specifically talking about ed choice, I'm not sure if that topic will come up later or if we can speak to it now. Ed choice has obviously been a topic that was very hotly contested back in March. It seemed like the state just kind of dropped the issue whenever the coronavirus came. Yesterday, I was very thankful. I actually got to meet with Speaker Cupp, the new House Speaker. He came to Middletown, visited the area, and one of the first topics we were able to talk about was ed choice. But it was also, we talked about the Cupp-Patterson that my opponent briefly talked about. I believe Cupp-Patterson is a good idea. It's a bipartisan bill that essentially the state takes up the costs. Right now, the state only pays half. The speaker actually alluded to this. This would actually save the state money in the long run. He said that hearings will be taking place next week. So I'm excited to see the steps the House takes, hopefully in the Senate, to do this. In this specific budget, school funding is reduced, but going forward, I feel like if we can establish a new formula, if we can do that, we can benefit schools, and the new formula would not take effect till July. But going forward, if we can get that new formula put in place now, we can have success in getting more funds to public schools. Maybe not next year, but in the coming years. And last thing I'll say on this, last night we were at another event with the speaker, and at that event, school funding came up as well. So it's not an issue just for the 53rd district. This is a statewide issue that other people are concerned about. So I'm excited to try to work with our local school boards. I've been trying to meet with them and talk to them about their process and their stances on things, and try to formulate a good plan to go to Columbus.
All right, thanks. And I'm going to cheat under the rules here a little bit and ask a follow-up question about a different part of the education puzzle, basically, and that's with college and post-secondary education more generally. According to the Ohio Attorney General's office, almost 2/3 of Ohio's college students leave college now in debt, and they carry on average just over now about $30,000 in student loan debt when they leave college. Given that situation, what are your ideas about how we can make college and other post-secondary educational opportunities more affordable for families here in Ohio. As a state legislator, what do you plan to do to address that issue? And if we can hold this to a minute or so, that'd be great. And could Ms. Novak, could you go first on that, please?
Sure. You know, I was a member of the Wright State University Board of Trustees as a student trustee 20 years ago. And that was about the same time when the state started taking funding away from our education institutions, and tuition kept going up and up and up at rates that we hadn't seen before. And I think that we need to begin to reverse that. And I think that our higher education institutions need to start getting more funding. And I don't think it's just a matter of that training opportunity and the job opportunities that offers to our students, our young people. But our universities are also our research institutions. And that impacts our economy, it impacts our schools, the mental health of children in our schools. When I need help with knowing what the best practices are, I go to our universities. Our farms can benefit from that. So I think investing in our higher education institutions is investing in our economy. It's investing in the future of Ohio, and it's what's going to get people to stay here and what's going to get jobs to stay here and to be built here.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hall?
Yeah, so secondary education is something that hits close to home for me. In high school, I was able to partake in secondary education, was able to attend Miami regionals, as a lot of my peers did at the time. Now it's becoming more of a practice for high school students to take post-secondary classes. What's that mean? For those of you that don't know, you can take classes while you're in high school at the local university, and in that you can get dual credit. So you get credit for your college class and you get credit for the high school class at the same time. So I think that I'm a full supporter of post-secondary experience, and education and experience through living it. I also want to say that college isn't the only route people have. Think about our district. Think about the makeup of the district with so many farms and so many other options besides college. We have an amazing school here in this district that is just outside the district, but a lot of the kids in the district attend, and that's Butler Tech. I'm supposed to meet with Butler Tech this week. I'm excited to meet with them because they have a lot of amazing things, and they have a lot of trade programs and a lot of other education options that students have rather than going the college route and having those expenses at the end of the degree. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
All right. Just real quick to follow up on the first education question, just a real quick yes or no. Yes or no, are you for or against, or I guess a for or against, vouchers and ed choice, Ms. Novak? Yes or no? Yay or nay, for or against?
Am I, like, nay would be?
Yeah. Are you for or against vouchers or ed choice?
Against.
You're for them? Okay. Mr. Hall?
I'm sorry. I said against.
Oh, I'm sorry. Against. Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry. Mr. Hall, for or against?
I would say for. Money follows the student.
All right. Thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify that a little bit. I think that was just to give that option or opportunity there. But switching gears again, I've asked, I have a couple questions about House Bill 6 and the recent controversy around the former speaker, Larry Householder. First on a corruption question, and it's 1 minute for each question. First, on the campaign finance side of this story, there are the recent allegations of the use of a 501c4 organization to funnel money, corporate money to the former speaker, allegedly, and his allies, if true, are a prime example of how dark money can fuel corruption in government. In light of this scandal, do you believe that Ohio's campaign finance laws need to be reformed? And if so, what specific reforms would you support? And I believe we have Mr. Hall first.
Yes, I do believe that there needs to be some reforms in the campaign finance. As far as the candidates' campaign finance, as you can see, everything's all online for us. There's no place in the Ohio House or the Ohio Senate, for that matter, for pay-to-play. We need to make sure that we're sending people up there with good integrity, people up there that are not going up there to benefit themselves, but to look out for the entire district. As far as Mr. Householder, I just want to make this point clear. I did not know Mr. Householder personally. I met him once at a dinner. Our campaign was in no way connected to any pay-to-play because our votes are not being sold. We are very transparent with our district. We strive every day to make connections in this district. So as far as that goes, a lot of these decisions were made before I even entered the race last August. So there's no place for corruption. There's no place for pay-to-play in the Ohio House. And going forward, the reforms that need to be put in place need to make sure that the dark monies, as you alluded to, need to be shown to the public that it's happening and that we could take care of it by changing some of the laws or some of the reforms.
Great, thank you. Ms. Novak, 1 minute.
Yeah, well, of course, we need more transparency in campaign finance. I get really upset when I hear about the corruption that's been in Columbus, and we know that it's been there for a long time, that this is not the first Speaker of the House to be wrapped up in some corruption scandal. And what that means for us locally is that when we have these issues, we have a heroin epidemic, we have, underfunded schools, we have people who have health issues and need access to health care. So we have all these things going on in our local communities. And then we see these games and these charades of the people who are supposed to be representing us and the people who are supposed to be taking care of our communities, getting tied up in these dark money scandals, working for corporations and special interests and not for the people who live here. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to run, because we need representatives that care about this community, that have integrity. And so anything that we can do to make sure that that's not happening, we need to do. And I think, I know Householders on our ethics committee right now, which is a joke, but we need to have some kind of task force to talk about what are other ways that we can make sure that people are involved. And the higher our participation rates, the more people have a say and a voice in legislation. And that's another reason why I do support expanding and making sure people have access to vote.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Now, the second part of this question is about the law itself. So just looking at the substance of House Bill 6, which passed in 2019, it provides about $1 billion in subsidies for 2 nuclear power plants, I think 1.3 billion. It also cuts back dramatically on Ohio's renewable energy and energy efficiency standards. What is your position on what should be done now with House Bill 6? And do you support what House Bill 6 did with respects to subsidies for nuclear and coal-fired power plants? And I know there's a lot. Do you think Ohio should do more to promote renewable energy and growth of the jobs in that sector? Mr. Hall.
I mean, do we get 1 minute for all those questions?
Well, 45 minutes goes real fast. We've got to get them all
I understand, sir. No, first and foremost, this was another topic I covered with our speaker yesterday in our meeting. House Bill 6, from the beginning, before a vote was taken, I did not believe House Bill 6 was a good idea. To me, it seemed like nothing but a bailout. For my district specifically, I would have been a no vote for that. In speaking with our speaker yesterday, there is hearings underway for House Bill 6. A select committee has been set up. I don't know the participants of that committee. I just know a select committee has been set up. The problem, my first reaction, like a lot of you, is that we should repeal and replace it. Get the dark monies out, get the corruption out, pass a good, clean law, all on board to repeal and replace through an honest process. But the speaker made one good point that a lot of people are failing to forget. If we do repeal and replace, the rates of the energy is going to go up on all Ohioans, which could be a bigger problem than overall repeal and replacing it. But my first reaction is to look at repeal and replacing it because of everything going on around the House bill specifically, and not being transparent.
All right. Now I'm going to go to Ms. Novak, but I'm going to come back because that's the last question I don't think you really answered. So Ms. Novak, what is your position on what should be done with House Bill 6? And do you support what House Bill 6 did and with respect to subsidies and with the power plants? 1 minute.
I think it should be repealed. I don't support what it did. I don't support corporate bailouts. I was in Columbus last February, and I was talking to one of our representatives on the Energy Committee, and I just couldn't understand how that got passed. After the summer, I could understand how that got passed, but I think that it was bad legislation. I don't think that our state should be in the business of bailing out corporations, and I think that we should invest in clean energy, and I think that would be another solution to putting people to work, to building our infrastructure, and just have clean, innovative solutions. And we already have some clean energy plants here in Ohio, and locally even, and it'll create jobs. It'll protect our environment and our resources that are so essential to all of us.
Mr. Hall, you're going to get 30 extra seconds on this question. So with the last question, specifically with the renewable energy, what should Ohio do to promote renewable energy and job growth? 30 seconds for you, Mr. Hall, and then Ms. Novak will give you an additional 30.
Yeah, so I apologize for missing the question.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
In regards to Ohio's approach going forward, we have to look at ways where we can have renewable energy companies move to Ohio. We talked about it in one of the opening questions of businesses coming to Ohio. We have to look at having things set in place from the state legislature's perspective of laws and regulations to make it easier for that to happen here in Ohio. I think my opponent brought up some good points about bringing more jobs to Ohio and making Ohio more renewable. Well, there's also got to be legislation put in place to attract those people to this state. As far as, going back to House Bill 6, it was nothing but a bailout, in my opinion, and we shouldn't be in the business of bailing out companies like that.
Great. Ms. Novak, 30 seconds. What should Ohio do to promote renewable energy and jobs?
Well, I mentioned the infrastructure projects, but I think partnerships between state and local government need to happen. I know that with our school board, we had an agreement with our local city to allow subsidies for companies that wanted to come in, temporary subsidies, and we did attract a clean energy company to come to Middletown, and it's been good for the whole city. We've got, and I went and I toured it, and it was one of the cleanest facilities and places I've ever seen. So we do have the technology, it's possible. We can continue to invest through state and local partnerships, and even work with our farmers and possibly give them subsidies to allow wind energy and other methods of, innovative methods for bringing energy and electric to the households, and hopefully lower the costs while we're at it.
Great. Thank you very much. I think, Jenny, you're up.
Okay. Along those same lines, I'd like to ask each of you about your views on climate change. It's an issue that's been in the news a lot lately in light of the recent wildfires out west and a very active hurricane season we are currently seeing in the Atlantic. First, do you believe that human impacts are contributing to climate change? And if so, what new state laws, if any, would you like to see enacted to address this issue here in Ohio? 1 minute, Ms. Novak.
I think it's irrelevant what I think in regards to if it's human or if it's something else, human intervention or whatever that's causing it or something else. I think that when we look at the environment, we need to look at We need to look at data and what's in front of us. We know that our waterways are polluted, our air is polluted, our land is polluted, and that we have let companies that are polluters, big polluters, go unchecked for a long time, and it's impacting the health of people who live here locally. So before we get into big world issues about climate change, I think we need to be concerned about our local climate, our local environment, and start there with real solutions for how we can start to clean up our environment, how the state can partner with local governments to make sure that those cleanup efforts happen, and then to be proactive, because a proactive approach is much less expensive than trying to be reactive and clean up messes that have already occurred.
Okay. 1 minute, Mr. Hall.
Hey, can you repeat the specific question, please? I just want to make sure I get the answer.
Yes. First, do you believe that human impacts are contributing to climate change? And if so, what new state laws, if any, would you like to see enacted to address this issue here in Ohio? So
yeah, I think that, humans do impact climate change. But I believe you mentioned California. California started, that's arson. The people up there started some of those fires up there. I do believe that we're not, the only country that deals with this. We need to look at China. We need to look at India and other countries around the world if we're really going to attack climate change. Because if we do our part here, we have to have partners in different parts of the world to address this at the same time. We need to examine what the state can actually do to help in the efforts of climate change, in my opinion. We need to have something that makes sense for my district, but also at the same time for the entire state of Ohio. So going back to your question, I hope I answered all parts of it, but that's just my take on climate change.
All right. Because time is limited, we'll move on to a different topic. A lot to cover, and I'd like to ask about healthcare. And this is a kind of a complex issue. I'd like to spend a couple minutes on it, actually. And let me set up the context here. So on November 10th, which is a week after the election, the U.S. Supreme Court will hear arguments in a case that is basically the plaintiffs in that case are asking the Supreme Court to strike down the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, in its entirety. And that act, presumably, if it's nullified in its entirety, would eliminate the federal protections that exist right now for pre-existing medical conditions, the requirement that insurance companies allow parents to keep their children on their insurance policies until they're 26, and it's also its coverage requirements of what has to be covered in an insurance policy. So if the court does in fact strike down Obamacare, then that issue will fall right back into the laps of the state legislatures pretty quickly. So in that context, let me ask what you'll support as a member of the state legislature next year, specifically, and this is kind of a multi-pronged question. First, if Obamacare is invalidated, will you support state legislation that reinstates Obamacare's coverage for pre-existing conditions as a matter of state law? Secondly, will you vote to require insurance companies to cover dependents until age 26? Third, will you vote to maintain the expansion of Medicaid that's occurred in the state of Ohio under the Affordable Care Act? And more generally, if you would, those are essentially asking, what parts of Obamacare would you support restoring as a matter of state law? Let me ask more generally, if you have other ideas on how the state ought to deal with healthcare and health insurance issues in a post-Obamacare world, what are those? So that's a really complex question. So this is another one I think we can do sort of a loose version of a couple of minutes to sort of dig into that. So if Mr. Hall, could you go first there for a loose definition of a couple of minutes?
Yeah, so I think that you kind of hit the head on the nail there, with the hammer on the nail there, with the Supreme Court's going to be hearing this in the next few weeks, or coming up, and it's going to be a big issue. It's going to be a big issue. You asked specifically about Obamacare. I am not in favor of Obamacare. I think there's too much government restriction on Obamacare. But my approach is for citizens that have private health care, more of a free market approach to health care. I will say this, I would support pre-existing conditions. I'm in favor for more funding for mental health. And talking again with the Speaker of the House yesterday, we specifically talked about healthcare. The House has taken some steps, through this pandemic and going forward. Some steps such as telehealth, where you're allowing doctor visits virtually. It's actually given the physicians that access to their patients, but it's also a cost savings in the end. And they're also giving more money to the opioid addiction. So my approach saves people money while ensuring that they receive the best quality of care. You mentioned two questions, and I wrote them down to make sure I answer them. The dependence on for age 26, I would be against that. And the expand Medicaid, I would be also against that. If you look at Ohio's budget, 43% of the budget is actually Medicaid. So I hope I answered most of your questions. I would be against a lot of the things you talked about, but there is some good in it.
Okay, so just to clarify, let me if I'm getting this correctly, stating it correctly. So you would support state legislation to require insurance companies to cover pre-existing conditions, but you would oppose state legislation that would continue the expansion of Medicaid, and you would oppose a state legislative attempt to maintain coverage for children on their parents' policies through 26. Is that correct? That
is correct. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Ms. Novak?
I don't know why we wouldn't want people to have access to quality health care. I know that the Republican Party has been making policies in the state of Ohio for over 25 years now. And the result of those policies is that we're seeing more and more people, shrinking middle class, and more people living in poverty. And if we're not taking care of people's health, then how can we empower them and expect them to get involved and to work and take care of their families? And there is a mental health issue also that is associated with poverty and lacking access to health care. I remember what it was like before the ACA, and I remember talking to parents who had kids with pre-existing conditions and how they were stuck in a job that they didn't like because that was the only way that they could maintain healthcare coverage for their kids. So we definitely need to continue to cover pre-existing conditions. I think that we need to continue to have Medicaid access and expand it. That 43% of our state budget, that's actually pass-through dollars that's coming from the federal government. But I think that the state could supplement that in order to continue to provide protections. The big picture is we want people to live healthy lives in our communities. That's the big picture. And so we need to look at steps that we can take to help that to happen. And while it might be more expensive and we might be pulling money by closing tax loopholes, I mean, there's ways that we can build our state budgets by these giveaways to multimillionaires that we have, and just have fair tax policy. And we can start to invest in people, get people back to work, and then they become producers. We are expanding our tax base, and we can continue to provide those services and think about them as investments in people, because I think that's how we're going to come back from COVID and the economic downturn. We need to start investing in people. We need to start taking care of people. And if that means making sure that they have access to quality health care, that they can go get a free COVID test to protect everybody else, then we need to be doing things like that. We need to be thinking about taking steps like that. And I would like to see it continue to expand, because I don't think that anybody should go without access to quality health care. We have so many issues in our state because of that. And we have one of the best healthcare systems in the world. We have people coming from all over the world to Ohio to take advantage of our healthcare system, but we have people in Butler County who can't go down the road to the hospital.
All right, let me ask just to clarify your answer as well. Please tell me if this is correct. So you would support state legislation that reinstates coverage for pre-existing conditions if that becomes an issue, and you would support continuation or possibly even further expansion of Medicaid in a post-Obamacare environment. As for requiring at the state level that requiring state insurance companies in the state to continue coverage to the age of 26, do you support that or oppose it or?
Oh, I would support that.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much. And we have time for one more question, and the honor goes to Mike, I believe, and then we'll move to closing statements.
All right, great. Now, both of you had talked to me with the Journal News interview that this state house race is going to have an impact on the district and the state for years to come. Now, you're going to be one of 99 legislators in the chamber, in one chamber of the General Assembly. How will you make an impact or difference? I believe, Ms. Novak, you are first.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the beginning of that.
Well, you both had talked to me about the state house race and how it's going to have an impact on this district and state for years to come. So how will you, as one of 99 legislators in one half of the General Assembly, make an impact?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I think that we need to do is we need to take a look at our democratic institutions and make sure that they are strong. The census is this year. We are going to be redrawing districts this year. We need to have fair districts because we have a supermajority Republican in the House and Senate. We have a Republican governor. A lot of people in our district feel like they don't have a voice, they don't have a say, and they don't have representation. We're to the extent now that people just feel completely cut off and they don't want to go out to vote because they don't think it's going to make a difference. That's what the Republican gerrymandering has done to our communities, and that undermines the integrity of our democratic institutions. We can make the best decisions when we bring diverse opinions to the table. I'm on a school board that's made up of Democrats and Republicans, and we have worked very well together, and we have made a lot of progress in our school districts by bringing together sometimes conflicting perspectives to come up with compromises that make sense for our community. And I think that by having the fair districts, that's the start. That's where we need to start. We also need to make sure that we're expanding access to voting.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Hall, 1 minute.
Yeah, so as the only candidate in this race with local government experience, every day in local government is finding opportunities to work together. Serving as a Madison Township trustee the last 4 years, it's been a blessing and it's been an honor. But there are times where we've had to work together on projects, resolutions, various things in our community to ensure that we're being fiscally responsible with the residents' tax monies. It's the same message going to Columbus, being fiscally responsible with the monies that we do have to fund the projects and to fund the things going on in the individual communities. We have had to work with the state and the county officials to compromise on monies, resources, and time. This district needs someone who can work with members of all levels of government to accomplish things to benefit this district in more ways than one. I am a fresh voice, a fresh face, a new voice that I'm hoping to represent you and your family in Columbus.
Now, in fairness, I think the school board is considered a local government, a governmental body. So just in fairness on that. Second part here, 30 seconds each on this. How would you differ from our current representative? What is your approach to this job? Ms. Novak, 30 seconds.
My approach is collaboration. I've worked in the nonprofit world. I've worked in the private sector, and I've worked in government as well. And all of these institutions need to collaborate. We need to have vertical cooperation between the state and local governments. And what we don't see now is we don't see any collaboration between anybody. So we definitely need to get more people involved. Being in the nonprofit world, I've seen that there are a lot of perspectives that haven't been considered, and there are a lot of solutions to problems that we're facing, and they need the support from the state to address those. There is no reason why we should have as many people homeless in our communities as we do. We should never see homeless veterans in our communities. We have an opioid epidemic. We could be looking at rehabilitation. These are local and state partnerships that we need to see more of. We need to bring our chambers of commerce in. We need to bring our unions in. We need to have solutions that work for everybody. I'm a collaborative leader, and that's what I've done on the school board, and that's what I'll do in Columbus.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hall?
Can you repeat? I'm still trying to think about what you said before.
Yeah. So what can the voters expect from you? How will you differ from our current representative in this district? What is your approach to the job heading into the State House?
Yeah, so what you're getting with me is nobody's going to work harder for this district. Nobody will go to any place in this district to meet with any group, whether you're Republican, Democrat, whether you agree with me, whether you disagree with me. My job as your next state representative is to listen to you and to look at ways to make this district a better place to live, work, and play. I feel like I've done that so far, meeting with different groups in Middletown and in Oxford, trying to get a better sense of why we disagree on things in these unprecedented times. So going forward, like I alluded to before, we've knocked on more doors than any candidate, and we've really tried to get out and do as much voter outreach to let people know who we are and why we're running.
Great. Thank you very much. John, I think the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Yeah, and that concludes the question and answer part of the proceedings. Now we move to closing statements, and we'll go in reverse order of how we began with opening statements. So, Mr. Hall, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you again, Miami University, Journal News, and the League of Women Voters for this opportunity tonight. I greatly appreciated it. This election is about two paths. Our path is protecting life and fighting for the unborn, protecting our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, to reopen the Ohio economy and support our small businesses. We will be a friend for farmers and advocate for policies they need. And last but not least, support our men and women in law enforcement and public safety. There are many issues currently facing our state that we've talked about tonight. Today, Ohioans began to make their voices heard as early voting began. I encourage each of you to vote, but to also get your family and friends to vote. Together, we will win this election. As your next state representative, I will always advocate for our district and keep our district a great place to live, work, and play. My name is Thomas Hall, and I humbly ask for your vote on November 3rd. God bless.
All right, thank you. Ms. Novak?
Thank you again for this opportunity to participate in this debate tonight. I'm running for office because I care about the people who live here. I have children who grew up here, and I'm looking forward to a better future for our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, for the people who are in this community. For too long, we've seen corrupt politicians and in Columbus not representing our interests. We've just seen too much, and we've gotten nothing. And it's about time we got something, because for 25 plus years, we haven't been listened to. Nobody's been listening to us. And that's what I have done on the school board. And that's what I've done in Columbus when I've listened to you here and what is important to you. And I've brought that to Columbus. I've advocated for support for Alzheimer's research, for support for families who are dealing with Alzheimer's. I've done the same for public schools. I've advocated for public schools, for public school funding to benefit our children so that they can look forward to a better future, so that they can have opportunities. That's what we need. And the state keeps putting obstacles in front of us, in front of our families, and telling us that we're failing because it's our fault. While they're involved in these in these pay-to-play politics in Columbus. Now, we need someone in Columbus who cares about our communities, who's been involved, who has been on the front lines working side by side with the people who live here and can push policies forward and work collaboratively with people who are in Columbus to make sure that our lives, that our children's lives, that our grandchildren's lives are better, that there are more opportunities, and we have so much potential here. We need someone who knows to take that and empower us to do better, to do more. We really have the bones for a great county here in Butler County with our universities, with Butler Tech, with our schools, and all the talent that's here. We could do so much better, and we're not going to get that from the status quo. I am Michelle Novak. I'm running for state representative, and I would love if you would vote for me because I want to fight for you in Columbus.
All right, thank you very much. That concludes tonight's debate. On behalf of Miami University and the Menard Family Center for Democracy, let me thank first our co-hosts for this event, the League of Women Voters of Oxford and the Journal News. And let me also extend my own thank yous to my co-moderators, Jennifer Fisher and Michael Pittman, for their efforts in bringing this debate to the community. Thank you as well to my son, Bryce, who's sitting right here next to me, and he's served as our timer and general Zoom expert here for the evening, the IT expert for the evening. And especially a big thank you to our candidates whose participation in tonight's debate represents their commitment to engaging with the public and to informing the voters here in Butler County about the choices that we'll be making in November. Early in-person voting started today in Ohio. Will continue through Election Day on November 3rd. Registered voters may also request a mail-in ballot, and instructions on how to vote in that manner may be found on the Butler County Board of Education website, Board of Elections website, not the education website. Well, maybe there too. Whether in person or by absentee, we encourage everyone to vote and to make their voices heard this election year. We also would like to invite everyone to join us next week for 2 additional election-related events. On next Tuesday, October 13th at 6:30, we'll be hosting a Meet the Candidates night, which will give voters an opportunity to hear directly from a wide variety of the candidates on the ballot in Butler County for federal, state, and local office. On the following night then, Wednesday the 14th at 7 o'clock, we'll be hosting a town hall discussion with Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose, who will be joining us to talk about the 2020 elections and election rules and how the process of voting is taking place in our state. Information about those events and others can be found on the Miami University Regional's website if you're interested. Finally, a note about the recording for this event. Recording is being made and will be available to the public shortly after the conclusion of the event tonight. Anyone's welcome to share it as they see fit, but other than immediate coverage, this will sound like a ball game, but this is the disclaimer. No shared recording of the debate may be abridged, altered, or edited without the express written consent of Miami University, the League of Women Voters, and the Journal News. So with that said, thank you again for joining us. Thank you to the candidates. Thanks for folks who are tuning in to watch, and we wish everyone a good night.